All right, friends and neighbors, we are here with Juniper Part 2, and today we're actually going to build a configuration. A small one, but we're going to build something. But before we do, I thought we'd do a little comparison between Juniper and Cisco. All right, so first of all, this is stuff we should know pretty well, right? When we've got the command line interface on Cisco, these are the basic commands that we have. We're going to be working with a switch today. So when we're on a switch, you do enable, you do configuration terminal or conft, and this brings us into the global area, and then we can go into an interface and work on individual commands. And of course, we have areas of commands. So telephony service for VoIP stuff. If I want to do routing, then I go router OSPF, my prompt changes, and then I do stuff that's specific to OSPF. And so that is sort of the way that we think about this. And then of course we exit and we go up to in levels, or we can do our show commands. So that's what we've sort of gotten to know in Cisco land. Now it turns out that Juniper is very similar to that. We have area commands, but one of the differences that we have to include a lot of the command or a lot of the components in each command, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. So Junipers are essentially hardened Linux boxes. So we're going to log in just like we do anywhere else, and we're going to get this funky prompt. Now at this level, you're really in Linux land, and you can do a lot of the things that you can do on a Linux machine. In order to get to the command line interface, well, we're going to type CLI, and then that changes the prompt again, and at this point we can get a lot of our show commands. So this is very similar to user exec level. And then we're going to actually go into configuration mode by typing configure. And these are just a couple of the screenshots from going through that process. So that's exactly what we're going to do in our demo today. All right, now I mentioned that Juniper commands are a little bit longer because sometimes we actually include all of the area of concern in the command itself. So here's an example of how we might give an IP address to a particular interface. We're actually going to use a very similar command in our VLAN today. So you can see that the commands actually get quite lengthy. And down below there, I've just got a little screenshot of how a lot of the families of commands or the area commands are organized together. So under a particular interface, you've got a particular collection of commands. And here's the topology that we're going to build. Very, very simple. We're going to put a couple of VLANs together. We're going to put a PC, or in this case a laptop, in each one of the VLANs, and then we're going to route between them just using the multi-layer switching capability of the switch. Our switch today is going to be an EX4200. It's a 48-port PoE switch. And before we get off too far, I just want to remind you that multi-layer switching does not mean routing between VLANs only. There's a lot more to multi-layer switching than that. Okay, so if we were going to do this on a Cisco, what we would do is we would go into the individual VLANs. We would give them IP address, or IP addresses. We would turn on IP routing, right? So we got to turn on the routing functionality. And the other thing that's not on this slide is that we'd have to put the interfaces in the particular VLAN. So that would be switch port access VLAN whatever, and that would be our Cisco config. Well, on a Juniper, we need to accomplish the same doggone things, but we're just going to do it in a little different way. So here is part of the config that we're going to do today. This is really almost exactly half of it. We're going to add ports to our VLANs, but the first thing that I like to do is actually set up the VLANs the way that I want them. So we're going to create a VLAN called the toNet, and we're going to give it a VLAN tag or ID. And then we're going to tell that VLAN that it's actually going to be a layer 3 interface, and this is our routing part. And then we're also going to give the VLAN an IP address. So all that is exactly what we would have had to do on a Cisco, but we just have to accomplish the task with a different set of commands. And then the last part of this is adding an interface to that particular VLAN. So we can see we've got two different families of commands here. We've got iNet and we've got Ethernet switching. There should be a dash in there, by the way. And this sort of shows us how some of the commands are organized. All right, so without further ado, why don't we go ahead and tackle our configuration. Okay, here we go. We are frapping, so let's get this Juniper demo started. So what we're going to try and do here is that multi-layer switch routing between VLANs thing. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a Juniper running in my office right now, and they are loud. So full disclosure, I'm on one laptop, and I've got another one here next to me. So here is my configuration, and we can see right here, this is the wired interface that I'm going to be using. And just for fun, we'll go ahead and try to ping. My gateway here is going to be 2.254, and we can see that this guy is not out there. Okay, and I am 2.1. Okay. My laptop here to my right is 3.1. Okay, so that's the goal here, to be able to get out there. And just for fun, we'll also do this. There we go. So this will not be able to go anywhere. Now, from the first half of this video, you know that we're trying to build this configuration. This is part of it, and I'll go through the whole thing with you here. But let's go ahead and get putty going here. Now, the communication settings for a Juniper are the same as a Cisco. So we'll go ahead and open this guy. And maybe what I'll do is make this a little bigger. Change settings here. Appearance. I forgot where font is. Did I miss it? Block on. Oh, there. There it is. Oh, anytime you're ready. Wow, what just happened there? Okay. Go a little bigger. Okay, good. So hopefully that'll let us see some things here. Now, I don't have a password set on this, so I'm just going to log in as root. And we can see that we've got this really funny cursor here. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Juniper under the hood is a Linux system. So I can do something like this. That'll show me where I am, show me a little bit about the directory. I can print my directory. I can, do all the things that we're used to doing. I don't know. We'll do something like that. Okay, so it's a Linux-based system. So there's, if I want to recover backup files or do something like that, I can. This is the way that I would do it, or one of the ways. But of course, we're going to be working with the command line interface, and you can see that as I did that, my prompt changed. And at this point, I have a couple of things that I can do. These are all the completions here, and we can see that one of them is our friend, the show command. So we might do something like show configuration. And as you can see, there's a couple of things that are worth noting here. One is the organizational structure of our configuration, right? We can see that these brackets sort of represent the layers of configuration, and certainly the areas of configuration where we need to look in order to work on that part of the config. Here are our interfaces down here. So if I was looking at port 0, the very first port on the front of my switch, we can see that everything that we need to do with here is probably going to come from this particular collection of commands, and we'll see that that would be true later on. Now this is a switch with a lot of ports here, so we'll just sort of skip ahead. The other thing that we're going to be working with today is VLANs. And we can see that by default here we've got all of these ports, all 48 are in my default VLAN. But there are an important distinction here is that there are no tags. So we know that on a Cisco the default configuration is to put all of the ports in VLAN 1. Well, here we don't have those tags. And let me move this a little bit to the middle of the screen here so we can make sure we don't lose it off the bottom. And we'll expand a little bit because some of these commands are going to get a little long. Well, the next thing I need to do is configure. And notice that my prompt changed again, and it's at this point that I can actually start building things. So let's get to work on our configuration. Because we're going to be putting some interfaces in VLANs, there's sometimes an order of operations. So what I'm going to do is build my VLANs first. So I'm going to go ahead and say set VLANs, and we're going to do the 2net and the 3net, and VLAN ID. Now I'll just point out that that Juniper also has some requirements when you do naming conventions. So they got to start and end with a letter and things like that. So, all right, so that'll be our VLAN ID or our tag. And then I'm also going to do set VLANs, and I'm just doing the commands that you see to the right here. The 2net, and now L3, this makes it a layer 3 interface, and we see the tab completion on that. And what I'm going to do with this one here, now because we're going to be using the switch to do routing between the VLANs, we're going to also have to give it an IP address. So VLAN unit 2, that should make sense to you at this point. Now this family is going to be, we're working up to layer 3 here, so now we're in the iNet family of commands. And we'll do 192.168.2.254, and then our mask will be /24. Okay, so I like that. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with our 3net. VLAN ID 3. And then we'll do our layer 3 interface. There we go. Okay, and then lastly we'll do that IP address, which is pretty straightforward. Oops. Whoa, almost made that mistake. Let's not do that. There we go. So this is nice. We've got our VLAN set up, but we really haven't done anything with ports. So now what I'm going to do is go into the interfaces and add an interface to each of our VLANs. And I happen to be using ports 0 and 12. And so we're going to do that. Now the unit is the box that I happen to be on right now. I remember that these are designed to be stackable, and so they could be part of a larger structure. VLAN members, and this will be part of the 2net. Okay. All right. So that was the whole command there. Now what I'm going to do the command again. I don't want to just up arrow over this one because we'll lose a little bit of what we're doing. Now I'm going to go to the next interface, and this one is going to be port 12. Hopefully that's the right one that I have connected down there. And then we're going to do our Ethernet switching. And this will be the 3net. Okay, so at this point I've given my VLAN a name, I've given it a tag, I've given it an IP address, and I've added a port to each one of the VLANs. Now if I was to do show VLAN at this point, I can see the configuration for my VLANs. I can also take a look at interfaces and see what I might have done with each one of those. All right, and I can see that I've given them their membership. Now, if I wanted to do a whole bunch of ports, what I might do is I could do the up arrow thing, or I could actually set up a group and then apply a bunch of, or apply the group to a bunch of interfaces. But since this is just a demo, we're not going to worry about that right now. Now, the last thing we need to do is commit. So we're going to commit these changes. Whoops. Oh, I didn't do the, since I just brought this guy up, what I didn't do was give my root account a password. Okay, so let's take care of this. So let's do set system root authentication. We'll see our options here. We're just going to set up a plain text password, and so my options here are just to put in the plain text password. So my password would just be hi there. Oops. Fine. Hi there. Hi there. Okay. So now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and commit. And theoretically, once the commit is completed for the config, we should be able to take a look at what we can do. So here is, oops, wrong one. So here's me. And if I got my ports correct, there we are. So there's my gateway. Okay, sorry, I got called away. Not exactly sure where we are, but we finished our config. We committed it. We did the root authentication. Let me see. So let's check some things. So I'm going to take a look at my VLANs, and we can see that right here I've got ports assigned to the VLANs. But let me show you another handy command that's whenever you're dealing with routing, of course, is that we do a show route. We can take a look at what the router knows. We've got the 2-net via VLAN 2 and the 3-net via VLAN 3, so that's nice. Let's do a show int, but this time let's add the keyword terse, and we can see that here's G00, it's up, and we'll do one more. Here is 12, it's up, so that's handy. And let's go back. We'll see if it works now. So let's try our gateway. Hey, look at that, we're working. Let's try the other side of this same switch. That's working. And then lastly, let's try the node beyond the router. Hey, look at that. Now, one other handy command, as long as we've done all this, is let's do a show ARP. Okay, so this shows us that we've learned the ARP, or the MAC addresses and the IP addresses of the nodes that are out there on the network, because of course it's a multi-layer switch and it's routing now, which means it has to engage in ARP. We'll take one last look at our config and what we did. So here is our interface config. Here is our other interface config. And we'll go all the way down. I should have added some modifiers here, but there we have it. Here are our VLANs. There's the default, and here are the two that we configured. And that will about do it. Here's some more details about the VLANs themselves. Okay, the tagging and the fact that we're routing now. And that'll about do it for this particular demo. Well, that'll about do it for this particular networking video. I hope you got something out of it. Hope I helped. So this was routing between VLANs on a single Juniper switch, and we compared the Cisco config to Juniper config, and then we went through a small demo on how to put those things together. Well, maybe next up we'll do a router config or some other such thing on Juniper, but thanks very much for watching, thanks for listening, and may your packets always reach their destinations. And oh hey, by the way, it's networking, you can do this.